I welcome everyone to another episode of Beyond the Forecast. I am Chief Meteorologist Michael Stevens, and today we're going to take you into two segments involving thunderstorms. Meteorologist John Gross is going to, one, break down step by step the stages of thunderstorms. So you're going to see the process of beautiful blue skies to strong, maybe even severe storms, what they go through and how they get there. But also on the flip side of that, you're also going to learn about capping inversions and what that means to a thunderstorm or the life of a thunderstorm. So meteorologist John Gross is going to break those two things down for you in those two segments today, and then meteorologist Haley Fischetti and I will take you into another segment of our Beyond the Forecast podcast from last week. We shot a new one this morning, but you'll see that tomorrow. But first, before we get into that, let's take a look back at this day in weather history. April 15th, 1921, Silver Lake, Colorado saw 76 inches of snow, 6 feet 3 inches, way above me. I'm only 5'7.5", so yeah, I'd be underground. In 24 hours, 76 inches in 24 hours. That made it the heaviest snowfall in 24 hours in North America. And their final total was 87 inches in just under 28 hours. 87 inches of snow in just under 28 hours. That was this day, April 15th, 1921, in Silver Lake, Colorado. Now, trivia time. Yesterday, we asked you, what is 0 degrees Celsius in Fahrenheit? Is it 20 degrees, 32 degrees, 0 degrees, or 15? Yeah, it's 32. It gets a little wonky, Celsius to Fahrenheit. But it's 32 degrees. Today, we're asking an anemometer. What does it measure? Does it measure pressure, rain, wind, or snow? QR code right there. Hit it with your phone, and you can weigh in. It'll take you to the spot where you put your answer in, and then we can see how everybody kind of puts their answers in and what they're thinking the answer is. But again, an anemometer measures what? Is it pressure, rain, wind, or snow? Weigh in, and we'll give you the answer tomorrow on Beyond the Forecast. Now, viewer photo of the day. This one makes me smile and laugh very hard. I really think we should put the Baywatch theme song behind this as we have the photo up, because it would just make it even better. But viewer photo of the day, brought to you by Great Rooms, is sent in today from Tina Lalone, and it has 5 turkeys strutting there, just full bloom, ready to go, strutting down the yard, and she has titled it, Showing Off for the Ladies. Again, I think it would be great if we just put the Baywatch theme song behind it. But Tina, thank you so much for sending in this amazing picture, and also thank you to Great Rooms for sponsoring that, as always. Now, getting into our show today, meteorologist John Gross is going to take you step by step through the stages of a thunderstorm. And then on the flip side of that, he's going to tell you about a capping inversion and what that does to the life of a thunderstorm. We'll have that coming up right after the break.
Hey there, everybody. Meteorologist John Gross, and today we are going to be talking about the stages of a thunderstorm, how they develop, and how do they dissipate. And when you're talking about, well, a thunderstorm at its peak, but in order to get a thunderstorm or just any storm that could produce rain, even lightning, when you're talking about hail potentially within a very strong updraft, well, you need to talk about the basics, and that all starts with the classic water cycle. So remember, that involves evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and then runoff to wherever that water might be collecting, whether that's in a lake, an ocean, things of that nature. So let's go ahead and start with that as we're going into at least what we call the morning hours. Sun comes up, sun starts to heat the earth, which then causes warmer conditions right near the surface. That's why as you go up in heights throughout the atmosphere, temperatures get colder, at least in the troposphere. But when you're talking about that, eventually any water that is pretty much ready to be evaporated from that heating, that starts to get lifted into the atmosphere. So those warm air parcels, they start to rise. And as they start to get higher up, they start to cool. Remember, because the temperatures, they get colder as you're going up in the atmosphere. So eventually that moisture, it's squeezed out. You're at what's called the condensation level, otherwise known as just, well, the air is saturated, and now we're starting to go into the condensation phase. So now we're changing over any vapors, water vapor, to back to a liquid, and that's when you're starting to see those clouds at least starting to develop. So here's a look at the stages. So now we have the clouds starting to develop. Now, there are 3 stages when you're talking about the thunderstorm. You have the cumulus stage. So this is the initial start. Again, you're seeing that warmer air rising, and you're starting to see that cloud starting to develop. So that's stage number 1. Once you really start to get a lot of instability in the atmosphere, otherwise known as just the air unstable, pretty much meaning that it's warmer than its surroundings, so it just continues to move up throughout the atmosphere. That's how you can start to get what's called a cumulonimbus cloud, and that's when you can start to build very strong updrafts and or downdrafts. Eventually, once that storm starts to become a little bit weaker, at least the conditions within the atmosphere not as favorable for the thunderstorm to continue to at least grow or maintain its strength. Usually at this point, the downdraft starts to take over, and then you have what's called the dissipating stage, and that's when you can start to see an end to these thunderstorms. Case in point, it's not going to rain all the time. There's going to be sunshine in between any storms that we do see develop. So let's go ahead and start with the first one. You're talking about that cumulus state. So here it is, that warmer air, like we mentioned earlier. Remember the water cycle. You're starting to see that warmer air rising. So that upward motion starts to help to develop some of those cumulus clouds. Now, cumulus clouds, usually what we call cotton ball clouds, those can be associated with a fair weather day. You can talk about sun and clouds. You can talk about a nice sunny, even a warmer day during the summertime where you just have cumulus clouds. But again, you do have to start with that cumulus cloud. So now we have that developed. As we continue on into the next stage, and this is the mature stage. So this is when the conditions within the atmosphere are primed, ready to go for thunderstorm development. So you're talking about a lot of lift in the atmosphere. You need to get that water vapor higher up in the atmosphere. You need a lot of instability, pretty much meaning that the air is unstable, so you start to develop very strong updrafts and very strong downdrafts. And once you start to get that updraft, if you remember when we were talking about hail development, that's when you really can start to get what's called a hail core within a cumulonimbus cloud, and that can be a very strong indication of a very strong thunderstorm. So that's the mature stage. So now you have a non-severe or even a severe thunderstorm in play. That's at its peak, but eventually what we call a downdraft, that can start to take over. That colder air starts to win out over the warmer air. Thunderstorms, well, they don't really like cold air, otherwise known as a cold pool. And once we start to see that developing, the storm eventually will start to dissipate or at least precipitate out whatever rain or even hail is left within it. And then usually that's when the thunderstorm is pretty much done and over with. So remember, you start with the cloud, cumulonimbus cloud, eventually going into the mature stage, and then you have the dissipating stage where you pretty much see the thunderstorm rain itself out. So those are the main 3. Now remember, you can have a non-severe thunderstorm or you can have a severe thunderstorm. And especially when you're talking about the severe thunderstorm, that's when you can start to get a severe thunderstorm watch or a severe thunderstorm warning. And in specific cases, if it is a strong enough thunderstorm that is capable of producing very strong winds, large hail, you can also have tornadoes associated with severe thunderstorms. That's when you can start to get back into the watch versus the warning. So when you're talking about that severe thunderstorm watch, remember, conditions are favorable. We have the ingredients ready to go, but we haven't produced it yet. When you're talking about that severe thunderstorm warning, taco warning, we have the severe thunderstorm, we have tacos. I'm Meteorologist John Gross reporting for Beyond the Forecast.
Thanks, John, for describing those stages of a thunderstorm to us. But he's not done yet. Now he's going to tell you about capping inversions and what that does to a life of a thunderstorm. We'll have those details right after the break.
Hey there, everybody. Meteorologist John Gross, and today we're going to be talking all about what exactly does a capping inversion mean and why is it important when we're forecasting the chance, especially for thunderstorms or even a severe weather day, because this can be the difference between whether we see initiation, meaning that we're starting to build thunderstorms, or whether we just have a dud and we're not talking about any thunderstorm development. So let's go ahead and think about this in a way that you might understand a little bit better. Think about your stove at home in the kitchen. You're making dinner. Let's talk about a pot of mac and cheese, one of my favorites. Now, usually to get that water boiling, at the surface. That's usually your gas, your electric, whatever source of fuel that you're having to get that water warming. So we can think of that as warming the surface of the earth. Now, usually when you're talking about making a pot of mac and cheese, you've got a lid on top of the water. You can think of that lid as the capping inversion. It's keeping that warmer air from rising very, very quickly into what we would call the atmosphere. Now, if you release that lid, you usually see a big plume of steam rise very, very quickly. That's releasing the cap. But if you have that lid on top, that's what you can think of as the capping inversion. So let's go to our 3D box. Here it is. When you're talking about that cap, you usually do have a layer of warmer air relative to what the temperature is at the surface. And remember, warmer air is more buoyant than colder air. So as that colder air, it's trying to at least lift or move throughout the atmosphere into the mid-levels. It reaches this warmer layer and it can't overcome it. So that colder air, it's more dense, and then it retreats back down to the surface. So that's what you're talking about with the capping inversion. So we need a way to break that cap. So remember, if you release the lid from the mac and cheese, that's when you get that plume of steam that rises very, very quickly. So in order to break that cap in the atmosphere, you need to heat the surface more than what the temperature is at that mid-level. And once you start to do that, that's going to be enough heat to initiate what you can start to see as clouds forming. And then once you start to talk about thunderstorms, remember that's a cumulonimbus cloud. So eventually you're starting to develop updrafts and even downdrafts within that thunderstorm. So that's what you need. You need your surface layer eventually warmer than that layer above. And once you do that, that can be enough to eventually break that cap. And once we're also talking about breaking the cap, you're usually also talking about frontal boundaries. That's the difference between, remember, cold fronts, warm fronts, or at least colder air masses versus warmer air masses. So once you start to get that initial rise with that warmer air, now you've got the warmest air at the surface, still some warm air in the mid-levels, but remember, temperatures get colder as you go up with height. If you introduce a frontal boundary, eventually that front will start to help to initiate more lift within the atmosphere. And that's how you can also help to break the cap and initiate the chances for not only just clouds, but even the chance for thunderstorms to develop, especially during the peak heating hours of the afternoon. We'll go ahead and end it with this. This is what we call a skew-T model. Now, I don't expect you to know every single line on this diagram, but what I want you to pay attention to is this really dark line right here. Remember, temperatures decrease as you're going up in height. So actually the temperature lines are oriented in this direction. So you see this line right here, it says LCL. This is where the temperature is decreasing with height, but then you see that line going the opposite direction for a brief period. That's where you've got that little warmer layer in the atmosphere. And as you're looking at this skew-T, as from a meteorological standpoint, that's what you would say, oh, we probably have a capping inversion. So in order to break that cap, you need to get these temperatures at the surface warmer than what that cap is in order for that air to freely rise throughout the atmosphere and potentially develop thunderstorms. So that's what you need to do in order to break the cap. I'm Meteorologist John Gross reporting for Beyond the Forecast.
Thanks, John. Now, coming up next, we sit down with meteorologist Haley Fischetti and go over our podcast from last week about fire weather and fire danger. And we have a segment from that before we show you our new podcast tomorrow. We'll have all those details right after the break. And welcome back, everyone, to Beyond the Forecast. Now, meteorologist Haley Fischetti and I sit down every Tuesday and do a live streaming podcast. It's on the Beyond the Forecast Facebook page. It's on the 9 and 10 News YouTube channel. It's on my professional Facebook page as well as Haley's and also 9 and 10 News' Facebook page. So if you want to join in on the discussion with us, you can. Just go there at 10 a.m. on Tuesdays, and we are discussing a certain topic. And we will have a half-hour discussion about that topic, and you can join us with questions in the comments. We see them live as you're participating with us. Now, if you can't catch it live, you can always head to Spotify or wherever you take in your podcast, or go back to the said sites and watch it, the VOD, the video on demand. But last week we were talking about fire weather and fire danger, and this is a segment from that. Check it out.
But yeah, the drought monitor is what we look at, and also that is what the DNR and National Weather Service look at when issuing burn permits.
Right.
Obviously, the conditions of the day as well. Some might think, hey, how do you get red flag warnings, or how do you know what goes into fire weather? So there's a few ingredients that you want to really pay attention to if you have plans of saying, burning the yard down or ditches. I know my dad and I, my dad grew up in Merrill down in Saginaw County, and they have big ditches where all the fields are. And we would go in there and rake the ditches and then burn them.
Right,
and
okay.
so keep the growth down. And if that's something you want to do, rake the yard and burn it, it's fine to do that.
Yeah.
Just make sure the conditions are good.
Exactly.
And just make sure you have burn permits or they're being issued for your county. Because if we have windy conditions,
Which we do in the spring.
Oh, yes, very windy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been windy all winter, let alone going into spring. If we have very dry conditions, low humidity levels.
Low humidity.
That is fuel. So there's a triangle that you can think of when it comes to fire. It's called the fire triangle.
Yep.
The three things that need for fire to burn, right?
Yep.
You need fuel, you need dry conditions, and then the last one is
Wind?
oxygen.
Oxygen, yeah.
So oxygen, fuel, and dry conditions.
Yeah.
So if you have windy conditions on a very dry, very lack of moisture in the air day, that is where you're more than likely going to see red flags fly up. Red flag warnings in Michigan, the DNR and National Weather Service partner together to issue those. And they're looking at low relative humidity levels, usually below 30%. You're looking at temperatures usually 70 degrees or warmer.
Yep.
And then you're looking at wind gusts upwards of 25, 30 miles per hour.
And when I talked to Jeff about that, I learned something that I didn't even know. Those are days in advance warnings.
Right.
Those aren't when you see tornado warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings.
Those are happening
all
right now.
like the winter weather advisories. Those are at most 24 hours. The winter weather advisories are 24 hours at most.
Yeah.
Everything else is happening in 15 minutes, an hour mark. Red flag warnings, Jeff was telling me that they are meeting every day for stuff happening 2 to 3 days in advance.
Correct.
So which was a shock to me because we're so of the right here, right now mind when it comes to weather. So to know that there's a department out there who are kind of like, well, no, but let's talk about what the winds look like in a couple of days. It's very interesting to hear from that point of view that they kind of already know when a red flag's going to pop up for us.
And I think that's where people get mixed up with watches and warnings.
Yeah.
Because we'll have a fire weather watch and then red flag warnings.
Yeah, and a fire weather watch can last a week at a time because it's just that's the conditions.
And so if you look back at everything we've told you, watches means, conditions are right to possibly spawn some of what we're watching. Warning means it is happening or conditions are right for it to happen.
We got the ingredients and it's happening.
Right. So, as John has
The tacos.
the taco watch and taco warnings.
Yeah.
Taco watch means you have the ingredients laid out. Taco warning means tacos are ready to be eaten.
Right.
So if you look at a watch, the ingredients are there. A warning means
It's happening.
it's happening.
Yeah.
So with fire or red flag warnings, it means those conditions are in place and happening. It doesn't necessarily mean fire is happening, but if it does, it could be an explosive situation.
Right.
That's why red flag warnings aren't necessarily saying it's happening now. The conditions are happening now.
Yeah.
But the fire weather watch means the conditions could lead to red flag warning, which could lead to
Fires.
So that is red flag warning and fire weather watch is just a little bit different than tornado warning, tornado watch, severe thunderstorm warning, severe thunderstorm watch.
Exactly.
But those all come via the DNR and National Weather Service working hand in hand. And sometimes conditions are like skirting the line, and you'll usually see a red flag warning come even if it doesn't necessarily meet all of the criteria.
Right.
You'll see them skirt the line because
if it's super
2%
windy,
of humidity could make all the difference in the world.
100%, yeah.
So that is going to be they're a little bit more.
So there you go. And again, if you want to catch all those podcasts, head to the Beyond the Forecast Facebook page, 910 News YouTube channel, or as well as my Facebook page or 910's, and you can watch it live. If you want to take it in but not live, go wherever you find your podcasts or head to those sites and watch the video on demand. So that does it for our show today. We appreciate you all being here. And tomorrow we'll be back 4:30 to 5 o'clock. Beyond the Forecast, a little science and a little weather. For meteorologist John Gross, meteorologist Haley Fischetti, I'm Chief Meteorologist Michael Stevens. Be good, stay safe, take care. We'll see you all right here tomorrow.